Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for the Untangle Tech Talk series. Today we'll be showcasing one of our NG Firewall applications, our web filter. My name is Shannon Bonfiglio, and I'm part of the marketing team here at Untangle, and I'll be your host today. I have with us also Chad McNaughton. He's one of our sales engineers, and he'll be taking us through the presentation and giving us a pretty in-depth demonstration of the web filter app. Next slide, please, Chad. Thank you. Just a few housekeeping rules before we get started. Please be sure you're selecting the correct audio preference. On the right-hand side, you'll see the option to use your computer speakers or to use a telephone. If you do select the telephone option, you will need to dial in and use the access code provided. Just a quick reminder, this webinar is being recorded, so you'll be able to rewatch or revisit the areas that you want to follow up on. We'll be sending out the recording link within 24 hours after this has ended. And as always, we'll be answering questions throughout the presentation, so please be sure to submit any of those questions through the Q&A box. We have a few of our technical staff members on hand to help answer those questions. And as always, if you have a very specific question or just want to talk to us, you can email us at sales@untangle.com or support@untangle.com. Now, just right before I pass it over to Chad right now, I want to reiterate that this is a highly technical webinar. So if you are not familiar with Untangle or networking concepts in general, then this webinar is probably going to be a little too detailed for you, and I would suggest taking a look at our 101 webinar series, which covers our higher level topics, and you can check out a list of all of our upcoming webinars on our website. And with that, I'll pass it over to Chad.
All right, thanks, Shannon, and thanks everyone for joining us. GoToMeeting doesn't want to go full screen for me here, so apologies for that. It gave me some trouble, so we'll just roll with it like it is. As Shannon said, this is an Untangle Tech Talk. So this is going to be a pretty deep dive. If you're brand new to Untangle, again, this may not be the best webinar for you. Our Untangle 101 series that's all on our website, on our YouTube, would be a great starting point. So what we're going to talk about today is web filter. So what is web filter? This is our application that provides URL-based filtering for HTTP, HTTPS, which includes category URL, IP filtering, and even some more options. So to fully filter the modern internet, SSL inspector is going to be required to decrypt HTTPS traffic. So with Untangle's complete package, you have both of these apps at your disposal. SSL inspector won't do anything but decrypt HTTPS. What that does is enable every other app you see in this graphic to scan that packet because it's now HTTP. There's no app in the world that can see an HTTPS packet by design. That's why it's so great. That's why I can have a banking app on my phone and still sleep at night, because that traffic is encrypted. So for web filter, virus blocker to really see those, we use SSL inspector to decrypt HTTPS down to HTTP. So running through the web filter categories list, when you get into web filter settings, this is the second tab you can jump into, you will see a lot of categories. This is coming from a database from a company out here in Denver called Zavello. And they're pushing towards 600 million URLs categorized. That's all they do, is categorize websites. So within Untangle, you can do a quick site lookup. The tab over from categories will just let you punch in twitter.com and it'll show you what the category is. A single URL in Untangle can be in up to 3 separate categories. So if you go do a quick site lookup for ESPN.com, for example, you'll see that it's in 3 categories: streaming video and sports and news. So if you block any of those 3 categories, that website's going to be blocked. So maybe someone will come to you and say, I was trying to get the Premier League scores from this weekend, the Champions League from this week. Why are we blocking ESPN? Why are we blocking sports? And you'll go look and you'll say, oh no, we're blocking streaming video. So that's when you could go whitelist that domain, ESPN.com, and allow it, rather than unblocking the category. So again, if you're not sure about a site's categorization, you can just do a quick little lookup to hit the database. So these block and flag actions are going to operate the same way for all of our different web filter options. They're all going to do the same exact thing. Flag is to get reporting. Blocking is going to present a web page saying this site has been blocked. So quick tip, The default set of blocked categories will actually block most hazardous websites. So by default, we block anonymizers, we block malware distribution points, phishing sites. We can also block things like online ads in WebFilter. Enabling that block checkbox will automatically enable the flag as well. So unless you, for some reason, want to block traffic and not report on it, that's an automatic thing that WebFilter does for you. So I mentioned a little bit about the blacklist, whitelist. So these are technically called blocked sites for the blacklist and pass sites for the whitelist. So within Untangle, you're able to use glob matching for syntax in these rules. So you can enter individual URLs with wildcards like we have there in the top rule. You'll see we have asterisk web proxy asterisk. What that's doing is looking for any mention of the term web proxy in a URL. There aren't a lot of proxy sites that don't say web proxy. An interesting thing that you can test for yourself with Untangle is a site called stealthy.co. This is a very popular proxy site. If you go look up stealthy.co, you will see that it is not categorized as an anonymizer. It's listed under technology. That's because the home page, stealthy.co, is not a proxy. It doesn't do anything to change your IP. If you, however, click on their web proxy tab, that takes you to stealthy.webproxy.co, which will be blocked with that rule. So I've actually had that question in support here. You know, we're blocking this site, but it's allowed. And Stealthy was the actual example from a specific call. So I went to the site and I said, wow, you're right, it didn't get blocked. But I did a quick lookup and I saw why. So if you do need to block something in a rule on the block sites or pass sites, always use syntax matching if you can. You can do some, if you're, for example, that ESPN rule. If you wanted to pass ESPN, I would do asterisk ESPN.com/. Just to match it so you don't have to enter every single instance of ESPN.com. So these rules work the same way on either tab. The examples are really handy. This is from our demo server, which we'll jump over to here in just a minute. But if you're looking for examples, we do have a little article on syntax matching on our wiki site as well. That's wiki.untangle.com. So if we go beyond pass sites, we get to the pass clients tab. And to be honest, I tell users to not utilize this a lot. All this is an IP address being bypassed around the WebFilter app. So WebFilter won't block or scan any traffic from that IP, regardless of categories. So all you're doing in this rule here, you see, is we have set Jerry's local PC to pass. My problem with this is that he's now removed from malware protection and phishing protection and online ads that could have, malvertising. So I personally don't really use this a whole lot, but if you need to pass a specific device just around the WebFilter app, that's all this is. It's just a client IP. Just throw the rule in there, give it a description, and WebFilter won't scan it. If I needed, however, to basically just give Jerry some access, I would go one tab over. So a few versions ago, pass clients was a really handy thing for us admins. We don't want our content filtered on the web. We just throw our PC, our phone, our laptop, whatever, into a pass client rule. As I said, though, that can remove you from some protection now. So the rules tab was created to give you more granularity on that. And this is something I'm going to show you guys on our demo server when we jump over there. This is a really interesting tool. This is within the WebFilter app on a policy. So if I'm in my teacher's policy, I can technically come over here to the WebFilter app in rules, and I can say, I want to allow games for this user. I want to block social networking for this device. So it's an interesting thing we can do within a policy. So my demo server, we'll see when we get over there, is set up as a small school. So we have a policy for teachers, a policy for students, and so on. We could, for example, within the teacher's policy, block Facebook. We don't want the teachers using Facebook, right? We don't want anyone using Facebook. But then I could go into the teacher's web filter and I could allow Facebook for a certain teacher or certain devices. Maybe they're teaching a class on Facebook for a week. They're doing a module on social networking. There's a lot of interesting things we can do on the rules tab, and it gives you a lot more granularity, some better options to just do little inclusions and exemptions within a policy. So in the past, we would go create a separate policy for all these kind of granular rules, but we don't necessarily have to do that all the time now because web filters rules can tie into 3 other applications, and we can even pass things like mobile apps. So if we keep going over to Web Filter Advanced, I'm going to talk about this in the demo a little more extensively. There's a lot going on the Advanced tab. The top thing that I'd like to mention is the very top box that's checked, Process HTTPS Traffic by SNI, Server Name Indication. So you'll also see Enable Safe Searching, restricting Google Apps. If you're a Google domain, we can restrict that to just your G Suite domain. But that top option, processing HTTPS with SNI, is an extremely handy tool because of what we're about to talk about next. That's SSL decryption and SNI, kind of either or, which one's better. Untangle has the ability through SNI to block more or less any HTTPS site you want. What we can't do with SNI is give you granularity into HTTPS traffic that is not being blocked. So I can block Facebook.com, I can block Pornhub.com, but if I'm allowing ESPN.com, I want to decrypt traffic from ESPN.com so I can see a URI, and I'll see breadcrumb trails of everything they're doing that started at ESPN.com. When we don't decrypt HTTPS, we're limited to just the host. So I would see, that my boss Jerry was on ESPN.com, and that's all I would see if I'm not decrypting that traffic. So SNI is important because it lets us block HTTPS without always having to deploy a root certificate to a device, but it does limit your visibility in reporting. So just something to keep in mind. This is a requirement for a lot of compliance standards here in the States for things like SIPA and HIPAA and CJIS. So just keep in mind, we do have a lot of different options for blocking content. For example, this is a really handy thing for public Wi-Fi. If people are coming in and using your Wi-Fi, you don't necessarily, want to send the root certificate to their mobile device, you can still block a lot of traffic here. So most of the bad things we can block regardless. It's visibility into HTTPS traffic that is enabled when we decrypt it. You'll also see we can enable safe searching here. That also will require HTTPS decryption. So if we're going to decrypt Google traffic, we would then be able to see what people are searching for on google.com. I honestly haven't found a search engine this doesn't work on. I've tested this with IX Quick, Google Ask Bing, everything I can find works well. What I always like to mention to folks is that we do a really good job of enforcing safe search. What we don't do is define what's safe. So that's up to Google, Microsoft, whoever's search engine you're using. Their results are what we present. So if they have safe results, we can present those. We can also block Google's Quick protocol. We do that by default. The option you see that's not checked there on my screen, block pages from IP-only hosts, is an interesting option because it allows you to block an IP that's being called to from a blocked URL. So if I'm a high school student, then I go to youtube.com and it's blocked. Maybe I try to go again while I'm watching my IF config so I can see the IP address that youtube.com calls out to. Untangle's blocking a URL, not the IP. So if we check that box right there, that blocks the IP as well. The box below that is kind of the converse of that. It will pass if the referrer matches a pass site. And then below that, we can restrict Google applications like I mentioned, and I'll show you this on our demo server. We can also do a temporary or permanent unblock. So since we talked about SNI just a bit, let's look at a little graphic of it here. So you can basically see this is host names and certificates. So we're actually allowing multiple SSL certs on the same IP here. That's SNI. So server name indication is generally a host name. So these are almost always still presented, but not always. So that's why SSL decryption can be very important. So if we're going to use this, I almost always enable all 3 options. As I said earlier, the limitations are no granularity in reporting. You can only block entire domains like facebook.com. And it doesn't allow for any scanning by other apps. And that just means that we're not decrypting traffic, like I said earlier. Once we decrypt to HTTP, virus blocker, application control, bandwidth control, they all pile on and scan HTTP. Just a quick note, you can see here if SSL Inspector is installed and inspects a session, the traffic is fully decrypted to HTTP before WebFilter even processes that, so we don't even worry about SNI. So one of WebFilter's big benefits, and the reason it's such an all-star in the complete package from Untangle, is that it actually ties in really well with some other apps. WebFilter, which I'll show you here in a second under our rules, can actually tie into mobile applications from application control. You can enable time and group-based filtering rules through Policy Manager. Maybe we want to unblock YouTube, after 6 p.m. during the week. Directory Connector will, you can leverage actual groups within WebFilter if I wanted to create some different rules, so you'll be able to see who's attempting to access blocked or flagged sites. And then also SSL Inspector is the decryption engine, which is going to decrypt SMTP and HTTPS. So basically WebFilter plays very nice with all of our apps. Personally, I think WebFilter is quote unquote the tip of the spear with content filtering now, but it is not the only weapon, So these other apps are extremely important in content filtering because no one in 2018 only looks at the internet in a web browser. WebFilter is only seeing URLs. We're talking about traffic in a browser. So if we need to look at mobile apps, we have to have application control. If we want to see mobile apps and websites and actually throttle them, we need bandwidth control. So these things all tie in really well together. So let's hop over to my demo server here and let me show you guys kind of how they integrate. So this is my demo server. This is demo.untangle.com. You can hop on anytime you like. It's always live. There's no password. Fun little nugget of information. Our demo server actually runs in Amazon Web Services now. So this is a public cloud server. So some of the best things WebFilter offers, to be honest, are its reports. When you install WebFilter by itself, you get about 40 reports out of the box. I can come down and say, I'm curious about the websites being visited the most. That's just a built-in report. So you can come in here and just kind of tailor this to exactly what you're looking for, So it turns out we have, a lot of people on Craigslist, a lot of people on Amazon. So maybe I need to go take some actions. What SSL decryption looks like is a very easy thing to show right here. So you'll see that we've got a host. We see google.com there, and we also have actual URI information because that's being decrypted. So you can see Twitter right there. All we're getting is a host. So this is the difference between SSL decryption and not. The SSL part, obviously, like I said, starts in SSL Inspector where we download the Untangle root certificate. So this is a pretty important aspect. Untangle is a trusted man in the middle, deep packet inspector. So to really decrypt HTTPS, we have to get the Untangle root cert to an endpoint. So there's a number of different ways to do that depending on your network. So once that's happening, the rules over here in SSL Inspector are crucial. This is what tells us to decrypt traffic. So these dozen or so are built in. If anyone on the webinar is unfamiliar with root certificate decryption, this is a man-in-the-middle inspection. That's what Untangle does. So we are putting a root certificate on the endpoint, whatever it is, and then we're grabbing their traffic before it goes out. So these rules are crucial. There's a lot of ways to do these, but we tend to isolate them to these SSL rules down at the bottom. So all we're saying is this rule specifically. If a packet comes across HTTPS and the word Facebook is anywhere in it, Untangle needs to inspect that rather than ignore it. So that's decrypting Facebook traffic. With that happening, now Virus Blocker is able to scan facebook.com for viruses. I can now tell bandwidth control to throttle traffic to facebook.com or from. I can also do that with the mobile app from application control or bandwidth control, blocking or tar-pitting or throttling. So if we want to take a look at the web filter, the real true, I think, value of web filter obviously is blocking the bad things. But the reporting that you get from web filter is crucial in any environment, I think. Whether it's usernames or client IPs or host names, we have lots of different ways to find users. We have real simple ways to drill down into their individual reporting now. And any of these reports can be customized and put on your dashboard. So if you have a lot of web traffic and you're concerned about viruses or people looking for pornography, things like that, we can create that report and put it on your dashboard as a widget, and then you'll have it at a glance. So when you get into Web Filter, you get a status page here. You can jump to the reports from here or from the little tab up here. Untangle's reporting is available from 3 or 4 different places pretty much all the time. And then you'll get a quick peek at metrics. So Web Filter is one of our applications that's policy specific. So right now we're on my default policy. If I wanted to look at the teacher's Web Filter reports, I would come over here to my teacher policy and I'd go into Web Filter. So this is a very handy tool because you can be as broad as you want to on a default policy, or you can create more policies and get granular. So on my default, we have it set to our baseline. So if we go look at the categories, you'll see those things blocked that were blocked on my slide deck. Things like proxy sites and botnet sites. We block child abuse images, compromised sites, command and control center. So we scroll down, you'll see malware, you'll see phishing sites. You'll also see online ads. We block pornography by default. These are really big categories, some of them. Depending on your kind of environment, in a high school, for example, I would, as an admin, want to block something like hate speech. This covers, religious extremism, terrorism, cyberbullying, all kinds of stuff. As we said, there are more than 500 million websites categorized in this database. The really neat thing about the Zavello Live database is that this is not a static list of websites installed on your server. This is a cloud-hosted DB, and anything that gets requested, it does a real-time lookup. So it will obviously cache a lot of this, but any web request hits Zavello's database in real time. So if I go to Facebook.com, it's going to hit Zavello and it's going to say that's social networking. If you thought that was wrong, if you think it's just a complete miscategorization, you can suggest a different category to Zavello. You'll see it says suggest, it doesn't say submit. You could say, hey, I went to Facebook.com and I think it's a sport fighting site. You could suggest that, and Zavello would send you a very polite email and say, sorry, admin, Facebook is social networking. We are going to leave it. So that's a handy thing. I don't like databases that you just willy-nilly change categorizations and have that kind of power. So this goes down to human employees at Zavello, and they make a concerted decision. As I said earlier, a site can be in up to 3 categories. ESPN is a good example: streaming video, sports, and news. So this is where I would say, oh, we do need some access to that. I absolutely can't unblock streaming video. So I'm going to whitelist this. So I would just copy this right here and come to my past sites. And as I said earlier, I would most likely enter this like that. So now for everyone in this policy, my default policy, ESPN.com and its callouts will be open. This past sites tab is a true whitelist. So this will supersede anything that's being blocked in categories or in block sites. So as I said before, this is the exact same kind of rule, same syntax matching as past sites. So if you wanted to block something, same kind of syntax matching. If I wanted to, for example, I could come here and enter asterisk period asterisk, and that would block it all. There's no URL on earth without a period in the URL. So if you wanted to, you could be that strict. So you could technically block the entire internet and then come over and pass a few sites that are applicable for your environment. That's not always very practical. Obviously, that's a lot of traffic to block and maybe inspect. So Untangle's able to be very broad or very specific. It just depends on your needs and your network and your organization. If you have an acceptable usage policy that employees or students sign, and you want to be heavy-handed and block a lot of content, Untangle does that really well. If you want to be a little more hands-off, maybe we don't have to block everything. We can always throttle services. So keep that in mind. You don't always have to block content to dissuade people from getting it. So between web filter and bandwidth control and application control, we do have a lot of options here in our complete package. So the past clients thing is what I mentioned earlier that I basically don't really use much anymore. I like that we still offer this, but I'm I kind of suggest people don't really use it, honestly, because it removes you from malware protection. So we may remove this tab altogether. I'm not sure. The rules tab I wanted to talk about for just a sec. So this is where I was saying we can come in and get pretty granular within a policy. So if I'm within my teacher's policy and we're blocking social networking, let's say I need to pass social networking for one device, one user. So maybe I have Active Directory. I could do a user day. Maybe I just want to do their desktop. So for right now, I'm going to just say for this device, I'm going to pass social networking. So let's copy that. The conditions are really, really open-ended. This is why I wanted to get to this tab to show you guys how open-ended this can be. Within Web Filter, you have a lot of options to block or pass traffic. Again, this can even come down to a mobile app. So if I'm passing social networking for this one device, I would come down and I would say source address is this device. And then I could say when anyone's on that device, the web filter category, social networking, gets passed. So this is the only teacher's machine that has access to those sites. That may not be very logical either, because not everybody uses social networking on just a web browser, you know. So maybe we need to just say when they're on that device or using a mobile application. So we could come say application control is. So maybe I want to make two different conditions. There's a lot of things we can do right here. And then I would just come in and type in Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. That's just how it's spelled. Another pro tip, if you actually do something like this, I tend to copy paste mobile application signatures from app control because they do spell some of them oddly at times. And then this is just a blocker pass. So between all these conditions, we can pull usernames, we can actually look at user groups, mobile apps, SSL, and obviously web traffic. This is a really cool tool. This was unveiled here a couple of versions ago, and I think because of all the protection that we offer with our categories list and our URL filtering, I think this is a better option than just the past clients thing now. So if Jerry on the past clients tab over here was really just looking for access, you know, to the internet, to some sites, I could create rules for just him instead of passing him around the web filter and exposing his devices to malware and phishing. So kind of a pro tip, I guess, just a support tip. You know, the past clients thing is handy if you need it. If there are certain devices that obviously we don't want to scan their traffic, but if it's a user like that, a specific user, you know, human interaction, using the internet, et cetera, I don't love that option. So I use this instead. So that's the rules tab. We talked about the advanced tab a lot in the slide deck, but this is basically what it looks like here. So the one option we didn't really talk about much there is restricting Google Apps. If I wanted to, Untangle is a G Suite company. I could come over here and say, you are limited now to the domain of untangle.com. So you're not going to be able to get to your personal Gmail or any apps on that account. You'll only be able to get to, you know, Google, basically. Any non-search Google apps. This will limit you. So this is a really handy tool if you're a Google domain, if you run G Suite, especially in a school. I actually had this exact conversation yesterday with a client in a school running G Suite, and they didn't know you could do this. It wasn't enabled. So now they've enabled their domain restriction, and they can actually isolate student logins to just the school's Gmail. So that's a handy thing depending on your organization. And I wanted to touch on the unblock option here as well. So we can set an option to unblock a website temporarily or permanently. This is handy for teachers, administrators who want to be able to just do this from an endpoint. This presents a password field in the actual Untangle block page. It's set to reinstitute that block. The temporary block is set to default of an hour. If you want to change that, you can. So you can give a custom password to teachers, for example, if they think a site needs to be whitelisted. They don't always have to contact the administrator. They could just punch in a password and that site will be open either temporarily or permanently for that policy. So because we talked about it so much, I just wanted to touch again on the SNI options. So this is where they are. When you get over to Web Filters Advanced tab, you'll see the top 2 options enabled. I tend to enable them all. And I'm honestly actually I have a pretty good personal example of SNI filtering. This is how I block HTTPS content at home. I run Untangle at home, obviously. I got a really good discount. And when friends or family or anyone come over, if my friends are coming over to watch the Liverpool game, I'm not going to try to push a certificate to their cell phones or their tablets or laptops every time because I just don't want to bother. I don't want them to be bothered by it either. So I enable HTTPS traffic by SNI options. So I can still block horrible things. If they're trying to get out to a site and it maybe has questionable content, pornography, anything like that. If it's HTTPS, I can still block it. Like I said earlier, I just won't see a breadcrumb trail for traffic that's being allowed. But I can tell you from experience, this does a good job of blocking HTTPS. So even if you're in an environment where maybe all you have is web filter, you don't even have the SSL app, these are available a la carte. You can do a lot with it. I don't want to people to get the impression that I think web filters, worthless without SSL inspector. It's not worthless. It does some really interesting things, but SSL inspector is what turns web filter up to 11 and really enables all the features of this complete package. So if you have the complete package and you don't run SSL inspector, you're not decrypting HTTPS, you are unfortunately missing out on a lot, I feel like. So some of that comes down to just the actual nature of the internet now. We're at about 84% full encryption with HTTPS here in the States, at least. Worldwide, we're averaging about 70% HTTPS encryption. So you can miss a lot, to be quite honest. If you're only doing SNI and you're not inspecting HTTPS, we can miss some things. Obviously, I think WebFilter does a great job with HTTPS. I use it at home. Decrypting HTTPS to HTTP adds a lot of value, but that's the only way Untangle can scan for viruses. So keep that kind of thing in mind. We'll never be able to scan a site for viruses if it's HTTPS. So we can block HTTPS, yeah, but decrypting it is still a very, very, very important aspect to content filtering in 2018. The only other things I want to mention here, we did talk a little bit about that block pages from IP hosts. That's where we can say, yeah, this IP is a call out from this URL, block them both. And then the kind of opposite, if this site is passed, let's pass anything it's referring to. So we talked about the reports a little bit. I think Untangle's reporting is great, obviously, but some of these are just insanely handy. As I said earlier, when we're decrypting google.com or Bing or Ask, we see what people are searching for. So that's a pretty important step. I love being able to see search terms. So someone is Googling finance right now on Google. If they were using Ask or Bing, we would likely see those as well as we're decrypting that traffic. So in SSL Inspector, you may have seen those rules. We're doing those as well. You might notice these are different. The actual URL rules above, these are looking for host names. So with search engines, that's sometimes a better option. So you can see we're doing that with YouTube as well. So it depends on the nature of the traffic, but there are tons and tons of ways to tell us to inspect SSL traffic. So that's basically WebFilter in a nutshell. It ties in with a lot of these other apps. I feel like it's pretty straightforward though. One thing I like to tell folks in demos and webinars, just another little support tip, pro tip. WebFilter and application control work really well together, but there is a really distinct line in the sand that you need to draw between them in your mind. WebFilter is only seeing URLs. Applications only seeing mobile application signatures. The only time they'll really cross-pollinate is maybe I pull up the Chrome browser on my Android phone. So application control would see the Chrome mobile app, but then WebFilter would see the URL I'm going to. So they will talk to each other, but they're very distinct apps. So just something to keep in mind. If you're looking for something coming from a mobile app, you likely won't see it in WebFilter. You might, but just a quick tip, you might want to go straight to application control to look instead. So let me jump back over to my deck here. I think we've got another slide or two. Shannon, are there any questions hanging out there that we haven't touched on?
You just answered one of the questions about
Sweet.
what the need for application control was, so that
Okay.
is helpful. Let's see. There was a question about the reports. How can you see which users are on the internet the most, if you want to showcase that?
Sure. So that will depend on your network, what kind of authentication you have, if any. So we could either go look at top clients by size, top host names, or top usernames. So it depends. If you have usernames, we would obviously go to usernames, but just a quick peek, you could just do top clients by size, and these are the IP addresses, making the most web requests. So again, you can click on our legend over here and kind of narrow it down to a top 5 like I've got here. You can see 2.50 is winning. So the cool thing with Untangle's new reporting is if I want to, I can click right here and add that condition to all my reports. So it's this little condition up here, same button. I just did it from the chart. So now you can see it's showing me all the reports that can show this person's traffic, and it actually grays out the other ones. And we can do that on our dashboard too, because we have this same conditions button. So depending on how they come through Untangle, whether it's just by IP or username, we have a lot of ways to come check, but we've made it really easy to drill down into that information. I just come over here and I say username is jsmith2, and I'm looking at Jerry Smith's traffic. So that's a pretty easy thing. You can also customize reports though if you wanted to, and save that as a permanent condition. All our reports are totally customizable. You can go pretty crazy in here and save that as a new report. If you're just looking for a quick peek, just come in here and throw a condition on it. And then, if it's a boss or a teacher or somebody who wanted to see what that person was doing, you just come over here and download that and send it to them in an email. So it's a pretty simple thing to do, but we made it a lot easier here in version 14. So if you're using Untangle and you're not on version 14, I would recommend getting upgraded one for the new Linux kernel and all the updates and patches. But this new reporting is really, really slick because we've added these little conditions.
Great, thanks. Let's see, some other questions just came in. Is there a built-in way to prevent hosts from using VPN services?
We could block access, yeah. There's not, Untangle is a VPN server. So unless people are, using some kind of VPN app to get around us, if that's what we're talking about, like proxying around us, sure, we could do that. What I was getting at was you would have to enable Untangle users to use VPN. But if you're saying they're using mobile apps, a VPN app, yes, absolutely. So in mobile apps, application control, you can click on category and you can scroll down, and I would recommend checking 2 categories. So there are about 1,950 apps in here. So as you scroll down to the category of proxy, you will see some very popular proxy apps, and Untangle can block or tar pit those. We're almost there. There we are. So in here, you'll see Tor, you'll see UltraSurf, you'll see Siphon, you'll see FreeGate. These are proxies. So we would actually have a rule enabled if you wanted to tar pit those proxy apps, because UltraSurf, Tor, these are very smart applications. You can see this is blocking or tar pitting. We could do this with VPN apps as well, farther down the list. UltraSurf and Tor are great examples. These are apps that were built to get around the firewall that the government of North Korea built. So yes, they could likely get around and untangle. So this is a constant cat and mouse game, and it will never stop. We have mobile app signatures for all these apps right now. So if their signature changes in 2 months, our database will change and update. But if we go farther down, you'll see a VPN and tunneling section. And there are a lot of apps in here. You'll see BetterNet, you'll see OpenVPN, you'll see TunnelBear, TurboVPN. So if this is what you're talking about, them using mobile VPN apps, yes, we can actually block or tar pit the app from even loading. I prefer tar pitting when we talk about VPN and proxies. You can see it's either or. They both block the traffic, but tar pitting never resets a connection. It doesn't start a new session, so the app and the user don't know they're blocked. So if I've misunderstood the question, I'm sorry, but I think that's what you're asking. So I would recommend tar pitting all that stuff, and then they won't even be able to load the app.
Okay, thanks, Chad. The SSL rules, do they work in rule ID priority order?
Yeah, so let me jump back over there here. Come on, mouse. So yes, you'll see a rule ID of 1 at the top. So if you want, you can say, yeah, I want to inspect Twitter before everything else and drag that to the top. So yes, this is a top-down order. You'll see ignore other traffic is always at the bottom. Unless you need that rule moved up, leave it at the bottom. But yes, this is a top-down order.
Okay, great. How to give an employee a quota or limit their time using a social networking app each day?
So limiting time is hard. You can do that through policy management. You could create time of day rules in a policy. So you could say this group of employees gets access to Netflix from noon to 1 p.m. Limiting them by time is hard without policy manager. Putting a quota on them is a real simple thing with bandwidth control. You actually will just enable quotas as you run through our setup wizard here. So once quotas are enabled, it puts them at the top of your order. So if a user logs on and they don't have a quota, bandwidth control gives them a quota. The second rule, if you're over your quota, you get penalized. You go feel shame for 2 minutes. So quotas are really handy, but these come from bandwidth control. So that's actually part of the setup wizard in bandwidth control. We can't technically use a quota based on time. Quotas are based on data. So we would say someone gets 200 megabits for an hour, or megabytes for an hour for the end of the day, for the end of the week. So our quotas are based on data, but we can set expirations on those quotas. So it's a little more convoluted than just saying this expires at this time, but we can technically do what you're asking through quotas and through policy management.
Follow up on that, is it possible to enact a quota for a range of IP addresses?
No. It's either a host or a username or a device. So it's always going to be a single device. You can enact the same quota for everybody. You know, when you set up your bandwidth control, basically everybody gets et cetera, et cetera. So.
All right, I think that's it for now. I'm sure there'll be a few more coming in, but I think we have a few slides left over.
So, I mean, you can see in my very top rule, the quota that's coming in, it's just saying anyone coming in on non-WAN. So we're basically just applying that to everyone. So technically, yes, it gets applied to everyone. You just don't have the ability to go in and punch in like these IPs specifically. Just clarified, yeah.
Cool, yeah. I think that's it for now.
So last couple slides here, just a couple of quick tips for troubleshooting your config. You can go straight to the session viewer. Events and reports are really handy. In Untangle, the session viewer is your real-time view into traffic. We do deep packet inspection. You know, we're decrypting HTTPS, so this is never real time. It's always about 20, 30 seconds delayed or so. But that's a really good troubleshooting step, as well as checking those web events that I was looking at where we saw the SSL URI information. You know, some commonly reported issues, browsers giving cert warnings. That's almost always an SSL thing. Maybe SSL inspector's on, but the certificate isn't installed. Gesundheit. Maybe the certificate's installed, but we're using SNI. Those can conflict sometimes. If safe search isn't working, I can almost guarantee you're not inspecting that traffic. So we do see some common things. You know, obviously our support team's here to help. I'm here to help at presales@untangle.com with our other SEs. If you do have some questions, support at Untangle. Our knowledge base is just support.untangle.com. You can just go and punch in the word web filter, and you'll get about 30 different articles on tips and tricks and just little how-tos from the support team. And always our forums and our YouTube channel are very popular, and this webinar will be uploaded, I guess, later this afternoon, tomorrow, something like that. And last slide for me, we also offer professional services. If any of this, you know, melted your face and you're confused now, you can always call your sales rep or hit us up at sales@untangle.com, and you can maybe benefit from one of our professional services, like a system optimization service. Something like that actually gives you 2 hours of one of our support engineers just going through your entire configuration with you on the phone. We can also help you set up and install or convert from another device. So if something like that is, you know, on the books for your organization, if you're changing over a big project, we can always help. Just let us know, sales@untangle.com. And I think that's about it for me. I'm going to turn it back over to Shannon.
Thanks, Chad. Just a few slides to wrap up. Thank you all for your joining us today and your patience. I love mentioning our promotions on our webinars for those who like to stay till the end. So We have a few promotions. Our trade and trade up program offers some special pricing. Whether you're new to Untangle or have been an Untangle user and customer for a long time, if you have outgrown your license count or appliance, you can upgrade. Or if you have a competitor's product and you're looking at moving to Untangle, we also offer some discounts for that as well. And as always, we love our home users, but if you ever think or want to bring us to work, we do offer discounts for those people that have us at home and bring us into their business. So just keep that in mind if in the future that is ever a possibility for you. And I think that's about it. Like Chad said, we have a bunch of resources on our website, the wiki, the forums, as well as this webinar will be uploaded on the YouTube channel, and you'll all get a link tomorrow. So if you have any questions, or if we didn't get to your question, if you have a very specific deployment, or you're new to Untangle, please email us, sales@untangle.com or support@untangle.com. We're here to help. We hope to see you all next time. I think our next one next month is on Policy Manager. So looking forward to that. So be sure to register for that if you're interested in that. Yes, the webinar is recording and will be on our YouTube channel. You'll all get a link shortly after this. All right. Thank you all so much. Have a great day.